And I think that kind of segues into a topic that you brought up with me in terms of regulation of our industry.
Right.
This is always that, you know.
This is a scary word, regulation. Nobody wants to hear
Right.
regulation. But I mean, so is it a plus or a minus that our industry is essentially unregulated? On the one hand, it makes it very democratic, right? Anybody who wants to can come in, hang up a shingle, and be a translator and interpreter. That's all great. But the downside is that anybody can come in and put up a shingle and say that they're a translator and interpreter and do that job. So other professions, I mean, we were talking about this earlier. I mean, just because I watch LA Law doesn't mean that I can go into court and defend somebody. I watch,
Right.
all however bazillions of seasons of Grey's Anatomy, but that doesn't make me a heart surgeon. So just because you took high school Spanish doesn't make you a translator and interpreter. And so we need to get in order for us to be taken seriously as a profession. So what does that mean? Does it mean that there's a it would be great. A lot of countries have a certification process for their translators and their interpreters. We don't have that broadly. We have different certifications with different organizations that can be helpful, but there's nothing straight across the board. In the state of Colorado, you have to have a license to be a beautician, and you have to jump through all these hoops. To open a barbershop, you have to do this. To be an accountant, whatever. If you Google interpret, if you go to the Dora website and you look for interpreting or translation, it's crickets. There's nothing there, and so people don't know. We get RFPs all the time, requests for proposal for people who want organizations who want. They have 100 languages that they need to translate into, and they say, we absolutely cannot work with you unless all of your translators are ATA certified. I'm like, well,
Good luck with that.
there are not 100 languages that are certified by the ATA, and where there are ATA certifications, those are the people that we work with, but there are not. So we have to have a conversation, I think, about what kind of credentialing needs that we need to have. Different states are working at different paces. The state of Washington has a union. And they're the West Coast seems to be way ahead of all of us, and they're doing great work. We have nothing here in the state of Colorado. New York?
New York is working on a union for interpreters.
Right.
And I'm in touch with them on a regular basis. They're making good progress on it. I don't know if a union, nationwide is the solution. Right. I don't know if another program or another institution is the solution, but I think in order to be sustainable as a profession, we should all think about solutions towards something that will make us more respectable, more accepted as a profession, and that establishes some standards for pay. So I know that's not something that people want to address usually, but it ultimately has to be addressed because all the professions that we just talked about, CPAs, lawyers, doctors, everybody has standards. They have the bar, they have organizations that regulate or oversee the standards. So I think we should think about that.
I want to say, Nicole, I don't know how many people in this audience are aware of it, and it's been an amazing show of how much power we have when we come together. But recently, over the last probably 2 years, a group of about 17 to 20 some court-certified interpreters came together and got a lobbyist, and we were able to lobby our way up to, in the last 2 years, get $10 an hour more.
Oh, well done.
And we did this because people came together and said, we've got to do something. And the way that we did it wasn't, anything short of saying, this is who we are professionals, we're willing to come to the legislature and say, do you know what we are? And they usually said, do you use those little machines? Are you court reporters? They didn't have any idea what interpreting or translating was. And so once we educated them a bit about it, they were open to hearing. Then they took these bills to the the legislature, and they got passed. I mean, it is such a rewarding thing to come together and talk about it. By the way, the other piece, because people do get nervous about talking about pay, is now we're looking at standards, and looking at trying to set some more criteria. And I think that the idea would hopefully be to not, again, these are lobbyists, it's not a union, but somehow something that is on that same page nationwide for all of us who are linguists to have a professional standardization.
Just to get that acknowledgement that it is a profession. I think part of the reason that the marketplace doesn't understand what it is that we do or how we do it is that they look at this. There's certifications for some things, but not for others. Some language, there's some of us have university degrees, some of us have certifications, some of us are sworn translators in our countries, and nobody knows what they're
that
supposed to
means.
do and what that means. So basically, they're just like, well, you're cheaper, so I'm going to use you.
Yeah.
Well, and you know, and they can't evaluate. They have no way of evaluating the quality of your work, maybe themselves. And so they pass your stuff to be reviewed by the person who's got the barista down the block, and he says, I don't know. So because there's no clear set of criteria for evaluating somebody's credentials or somebody's skills, that's what they fall for. But what we also have, while we don't have this credentialing process across the board in the U.S., what we do have are standards that we have in the U.S. We have a translation through ASTM. We have a translation standard F2575. We have an interpreting standard F2089. We have now a standard that was just published in 2018 at the beginning of the year for language service companies and how those need to be set up. So we do have standards, and whereas we don't have a credentialing process across the board, you should all become familiar with those standards because they're great to use as educational tools for your clients, because it was like somebody said earlier, if you have a standards of practice or codes of ethics, it's not that I won't do this, it's that I'm not allowed to do this by
Right.
this code.
You don't have to
If you've
decide.
got a third party document that you can show to somebody and say to them, it's not that I won't do this, or it's not that, but this is the way it's supposed to be done. These are the best practices. And you can hand that to them. That supports what it is that you're doing and how you're doing your work. But on the sort of the career development path, developing yourself further in order to make yourself more professional, we've got to make that, there's got to be some initiative. I mean, some reason to do that, because right now we can have people who take interpreting trainings or get certified, get the medical certifications, whatever.
Right.
But if they go out into the marketplace and the people who don't have any training are getting the same rate of pay as they are, who have, invested in their career development and ensuring that they can provide a quality service. If they've spent all that money to do that, and this person over here has done nothing, and they're getting the same thing and the same work, why would you do that? So we, as a profession, need to ensure that, that we are valuing ourselves the training, and if we value that, then ultimately the marketplace will. But until the client demands it, if a hospital says, oh, we want certified translators, but we're only going to pay you this, you can't do that. It won't work. So we need to value it ourselves, and then ultimately the market will value it, hopefully, eventually.
Yeah, and so it has become a conversation about value and values. I think it's very appropriate. I saw a hand down there and up there.